What is the potential of local and indigenous foods to contribute to food and nutrition security, as well as economic empowerment of marginalized farmers and consumers in Africa? Meet Charlie and Caroline, who are the founders of Hutano Foods. They are adding value to traditional crops and plants that grow best for Zimbabwe's farmers. At Hutano Foods, what they do is very simple. They add value to underutilized traditional crops and plants that grow best for Zimbabwe's farmers and turn them into delicious, healthy, quick snacks, breakfast cereals, and porridges for everyone to enjoy. Today on the Game Changer documentary, we look at how indigenous foods could change the face of food security in Africa.
Hello everybody, my name is Charlene Chisho. My friends call me Charlie. So growing up, I wasn't very familiar with traditional foods. We didn't consume it in my house. My parents didn't encourage us to eat it. Even my grandparents didn't even encourage us to eat it. I mean, we were accustomed to a very Western diet, and so were my friends. So I was very unfamiliar with these foods. And then I joined an organization called Bio Innovation Zimbabwe in 2016. And it's this organization that works with the commercializing of traditional ingredients or local ingredients. And I thought it was totally amazing and so interesting. And now I got introduced to basically my cultural foods through this organization. I got to interact with farmers and learn what their concerns were and the problems that they face with production, as well as most importantly marketing of these products that they produce, the things that they produce. And then I looked at things from the other perspective, where you're looking at the consumers. The consumers are sort of have an idea. A lot of people don't really know these traditional foods, especially the people I grew up with, my friends and some of my family members as well. They're not very familiar with these foods, and so when you tell them, oh, this is healthy or this is good for you, they're like, yeah, and then what? What do we do with these foods? How do we prepare them? Sometimes they take forever to prepare. It's long hours of preparation, or sometimes it's just a very bland recipe. It's just boiled and then what? And so with Hutano Foods, we then decided to address the two problems. We thought of, we need to find a market for the farmers, as well as also provide something that's easy for the consumer to eat, that's delicious and nutritious.
On an environmental level, indigenous foods have the potential to improve environmental sustainability by contributing to agro-biodiversity, strengthening climate resilience, and because of often lower natural resource requirements compared to more commercial and intensively farmed crops. Because indigenous vegetables can be harvested more times per year compared to many other crops, they support the resilience of farmers who, due to climate change impacts, are more often faced with failed harvests.
My name is Caroline, and I'm Charlie's colleague at Bio Innovation Zimbabwe and also at our small private company, Hutano Foods. As Charlie has explained, Hutano Foods, the idea behind Hutano Foods was we wanted to help local producers find markets for crops that do so much better for them, be it cultivated crops or be it plants that they could, harvest from the wild. We see that the issue of food insecurity in Zimbabwe, it's not going away. It may even get worse every year, and that's because farmers keep growing these crops, like for example maize, that are really not suited to their situation. And there's very many different reasons why they grow maize, of course. Number one is because they get the seed handed out. Number two also is because they know that if by some miracle they actually, do get a good rainy season and a good crop, that if they have surplus grain, they're gonna easily find a market for that grain. A GMB obviously, but also even just their neighbors. They know that they will get a market for maize. And also they know also that if they prepare maize at home, their kids will be happy, because that's what they like, that's the flavors, that's the taste they like. But unfortunately, more often than not, maize crops fail in this country, and so farmers should really be encouraged to grow, crops that are more suited to their conditions. And we're talking about small grains, we're talking about legumes, and we're also talking about just harvesting, wild vegetables and wild fruits from the wild. And we've seen that that there are issues around these crops, and that's what we've tried to at least partially solve with Hutano Foods, is the marketing side of things. That we try and help farmers find markets for these crops. And like what Charlie was explaining earlier, we also teach them how to enjoy these crops, and how to make sure that their children will enjoy these crops as well. So that's a very important part of our work as well.
Hutano Foods sources direct from over 300 small-scale farmers and wild harvesters across the country, increasing the value of the traditional foods they produce while they share the delectable fruits of their labor with a whole new generation of Zimbabwe's consumers.
So since, we've got our consumers, people are now becoming more aware of these indigenous foods, these traditional foods, and they're consuming them more. People are experimenting more now. It's got a very good positive impact within the communities, right? So every year, since for God knows when, the seasons are getting drier, rainfall more erratic, and so produce is constantly failing for the farmers. With the people usually would farm maize. So now through our company Hutano Foods, the producers are now able to harvest from the wild, because we have a lot of wild harvested ingredients that we use, and so they now have an alternative form of income which they can they have an alternative and an additional form of income which they can help for their families, or able to help them to survive. They can now buy food as well, so we support the local communities.
And they can grow crops. It's not just wild harvested produce, but they can also grow crops that are more suited to their conditions, for which traditionally there were no markets. Like your small grains, your Nemo, your cowpeas, your groundnuts. So we offer a market for even cultivated crops that are more adapted to the climates, what people call the climate smart crops.
So basically the farmers are selected according to an area that we're working in. So it has to be either regions 4 and 5, where annual rainfall is erratic and it's below 650 millimeters per annum. And then we also have specific species that we work with. So if those species are within those areas as well, that's how we also select. It's ward selection. So we select our wards based on what species are there, if they're present in harvestable amounts. So, in harvestable amounts that are sustainable as well. And then we also gauge on the interest of the farmers. If the farmers are actually also interested in, what we have to offer in wild harvesting and cultivating what we're looking for and producing what we're looking for, that's how we also select our farmers. So, so far we don't have a cap on how many farmers we work with. So it's a very open-ended figure, as long as it can be sustainably harvested. So
and mostly most of our collectors are elderly women, isn't it?
Exactly, yeah.
And that's again because traditionally, who goes out to collect things, who processes things at the house, it's the women, and it's the elderly women who still have those skills and the knowledge of harvesting from the wild. The younger people have sort of completely lost. And obviously they do join, and they learn from the elderly people. But generally we see it's mostly sort of the older generation that is involved in working with us.
biggest thing that happened is, you know, like, and it's really like a colonization thing, where it was, the mentality was, oh, if you can behave in a very Western manner, you know, everything was looked down upon. And so you thought being elite or, you know, being better meant you would focus on these other foods. And poverty, you know, that's where the poverty mentality came from. It came from, oh, you know, like, oh, you're not in Harare, you're still doing what we used to do back in the day. So that's where it came from. And our parents have the knowledge, and they consumed those foods. But then when it came to us, it was like, oh, I don't want my kids to, you know, be associated with poverty. I don't want them to, you know the struggle we went through.
Indigenous plants grow spontaneously in natural ecosystems and have been serving humankind as food and medicine in almost all societies for generations. It is recognized that indigenous foods and dietary diversity plays a key role in each community. At Hutano Foods, they do more than just empower farmers, but they also educate them on the nutritional benefits of these indigenous foods.
It's something that we have for a couple of years now struggled with and are really trying to address, is that even in the rural areas, you know, we ask all these people to collect all these healthy, nutritious foods for us, and you know, we find markets and we find interest for them, you know, within the urban areas and exports as well. And meanwhile, we actually extracting these foods that the local people should be eating. And we see it often as like, I mean, Charlie has seen it as a result of us buying certain seeds and certain nuts, etc., etc. The parents are actually telling their children they shouldn't be eating those fruits anymore because there's a market for these things now. So don't eat because I'm gonna make money from these things. And so actually we are, without wanting it, we've been creating a situation that is completely against what we believe in, where we actually now, these super nutritious things that people had access to, we're now taking them out and they no longer have access to them. They now make a living, sure, they make good money, but now they, with the money they make, they actually can't even buy nutritious foods because those aren't even available in the villages. When you go to, you know, the tuck shops in the villages, what will you find there? You will find
Maputi,
the Konkos, the Pepsi Coke. So you've now been given people, you know, a way to generate an income, but they can't, because they don't come and shop in Harare, or they don't come and shop from Hutano Foods. So we've actually taken something away from them and we've given them money instead, but with the money they can't do what we would want them to do, which is buy, you know, nutritious foods and improve their diets. So, you know, as Biz, for a while now, we've addressed that by also combining our, you know, our training around sustainable harvesting and processing and hygiene, etc., with nutrition training. And so Charlie, maybe you can explain, but Charlie, you know, with these same people that collect for us or that grow things for us, Charlie also takes them through nutrition training.
So with the nutrition trainings, basically it's trying to change the perception, the attitudes that these people have around the foods around them. And what I've also really learned is that urban areas are the trendsetters. So, you know, these guys are looking out, you know, and like, oh, in Harare, these guys have drinks with every meal, they have this and that with every meal. So if you try and, so what I've done with my nutrition trainings is to sort of create recipes around what they see as, you know, being cool, as what people in urban areas consume. So if they're all about, oh, we love Pepsis, we love Cokes, okay, let's make, you know, iced teas and drinks with these ingredients. You know, you've got so many wild fruits and it's so easy. Some of these fruits are so sweet and it doesn't take much to make a beverage. And so they're basically having, you know, a beverage with their meal every single day, you know, and you have to just change that perception that you guys are wealthy, you're just as good as the person who lives in Harare, but, you know, has healthy foods. Again, you know, when it comes to like, you know, snacking and stuff, you know, again, they like, oh, you guys get to have chips or popcorn or, you know, just these weird things. And I'm like, you have everything, you know, to your disposal. You just need to believe that these foods, because they enjoy it. Like I've never experienced any farmer who says that, we do not like the taste or the flavor of these traditional foods. What they can say is that we're tired of how we are preparing them, you know, because it's the same recipe, it's the one recipe that they know. So sometimes they're tired of those recipes, but they never say that the actual food is not nice. Another thing is that what I also have done in the past is to bring back old recipes, because sometimes you learn a recipe from, you know, a different area and then you bring it back to them because they've long stopped, you know, making these certain recipes. Maybe it was their great-great-grandmother who made them. And then when it's reintroduced, they're like, oh my gosh, this is, you know, amazing. You know, they love it again. So it's just, you know, bringing back that pride. You know, they're constantly looking down at what they have and what they're producing, and also just making them realize that they are the trendsetters and not necessarily the urban areas. Traditional foods definitely will play a big role in will help with the malnutrition aspect, because you have malnutrition in the rural areas. So that's with your children between 0 to 5 years. That's, you know, and it's mostly stunting. And that's because people keep focusing on just giving their children maize. They've completely lost the traditional ways of feeding their children. And, you know, like, our great-grandmothers didn't have this, you know, there were no issues of stunting because they were eating a wholesome diet using our traditional ingredients. So definitely that is a very big issue. And then also in the urban areas, people just are eating badly. So you've got lifestyle diseases like obesity and diabetes, which are caused by the over-processed foods. Again, we've got what we call hidden hunger, you know, so it's a lack of micronutrients, again, which you find in both the urban and the rural areas. And these can easily be solved by, you know, our fruits, our indigenous fruits, for example, baobab powder. It's got so many micronutrients. You could also get that from moringa. So just having a diet that combines a lot of our traditional foods really could help in preventing malnutrition. So Caroline is enjoying our popped amaranth squares. So this one, the one she's picked out, has got honey and peanut butter and a nice thin layer of dark chocolate with some coconut flakes and marula nuts.
Yep.
Yeah, so the square is absolutely amazing because it's high in fiber, high in protein as well. So it's so ideal for that quick energy boost and, you know, on the go ready snack.
Yeah, yeah. And literally, I think this probably was our very first product.
Yeah, it was.
It's the very first product we developed. So we've had it for a couple of years now.
Yeah.
But I literally could still have it every day. I could. I'm not lying.
Yeah, it's one of my dad's favorites because he does marathons, right? And so I buy him a square and then he cuts it into small pieces, like into tiny little smaller squares. And when he's running, he pops one in as an instant source of energy. So, I mean, they're amazing.
Yep.
So I'm gonna have my favorite,
which is Zumbani and lemon frisette.
So you have
which is our very latest product.
Yeah.
So this was our very first product. This is our very latest product.
I will forever love this. My favorite.
The re-evaluation of traditional food systems is critical. Traditional foods can overcome emergencies of food insecurity such as famines and droughts or unprecedented occurrences such as the COVID-19 pandemic, which the world has recently experienced. It's time Africa looks to their undervalued crops for food security.